Hi, I'm Denise Mira, author of No Ordinary Child, Unlocking the Leader Within Your Child. But more importantly, I am a veteran homeschool mama. Homeschooled our 5 boys for decades, and now we're living in the sweet fruit of that lifestyle. And it is just such a privilege to come and talk to you today. And I'm so glad you've joined me. And I just want to share my heart about what's going on right now and how I feel like this is such an amazing opportunity for us as parents. And although it's a crisis, we could say it's a global crisis. I mean, we are all in this together. Any other crisis that has come up, whether it's a flood over there or a wildfire over there or a hurricane down there, we could have compassion and we could look over there and, see what was going on. But we were exempt from all the feels, right? But we wake up every morning with a new sense of uncertainty in the air, disruption, questions, high anxiety, right? Just everything's been upended. I was talking to a friend, and it's like when you move to a different house and all you want to do is make a meal, but it becomes impossible because you can't find this and you can't find that. You're not in your default mode. You're not on autopilot, and our world right now is not on autopilot, and my heart is so filled with compassion for those who are really struggling more than others. But I want to hasten to say we're all watching our money just go into thin air. Every single one of us is being impacted in that way. We are all confronted with the temptation to give way to anxiety. We're all in this together. Anyway, back to parenting. It's not the first time, not the first rodeo we've been to, right? I mean, I can think of a lot of crises over the years, but this one kind of takes the cake as far as a critical juncture in our nation. And I just have this sneaking suspicion it's about way more than a virus. And I want to talk about that. I want to remind us of how our nations have been living in modern days, at least in my adult life. And actually, so many of these things were going on before I was even born. But I feel like we've hit a tipping point when we think about abortion on demand, and we think about manslaughter by drunk driving, and we think about teen pregnancy and domestic violence and child abuse and sex trafficking and fatherless children and our opioid crisis. And now we've got fentanyl, and we've got widespread gambling and pornography addiction. We've had that whole identity theft crisis. We've got people depending on alcohol and drugs just to get through the day for emotional disorders. We've got heinous taxation by our governments. We've got an absence of character and integrity in our elected officials. Friends, we've had school shootings, terrorism, the Iraq War, the economy tanking, and the Great Recession that we all experienced kind of beginning around that 2008 time. We have been in the throes of crisis for a very long time, but it's as if we've hit the tipping point. And if we look at all those problems and the problems that are confronting us, I mean, right now I have a couple of different security systems on my home. My faith is in Christ, but practically speaking, these can alert me to know if there's danger approaching. We've got in our city just constant car theft and break-ins. We've got so much going on, as I know you do too, in your cities. And if we really nail this down, these are not government problems. They're not just city problems. They're not just taxation problems. I mean, our property taxes, at least in Washington State, are a heinous crime. I'm telling you, it's just grievous, right? Talk about taxation without representation. That is not a government problem or a property tax problem or a thief problem. These are all parenting problems. Why do we have to worry about theft constantly in our city? I mean, constantly. We live near an urban area. It's not like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood where you just wave to the neighbors and everybody left their doors unlocked and you could leave plants and decor on the porch. And if a mailman delivered a package 3 weeks later, it would be sitting there. No. Why? Parenting problems. Okay. Go to the root. Who is parenting the children? Okay. Plato said this. He said, there are two important things in society, just two. Who gets to teach the children, and what do they get to teach them? Okay, that is an ancient message from an ancient voice, but it is just as true today as it was then. If a communist regime takes over a culture, what's the first thing they go after? The young minds, the educational system, to implement their new brainwashing techniques, to get their handprints and to shape and mold the thinking of the next generation. So what you have to realize is everything we're living in our society today, everything you're looking at on the news, on Instagram, on Facebook, on the news channels in Congress, these all started at home because the hand that rocks the cradle not only rules the world, but rocks the world. Hear my heart, friends. And so what I see here is I see that, we've got Andrew Cuomo over there in New York declaring the greatest reproductive freedom. That's called abortion. Okay, abortion on demand. That's called infanticide. All that. We can't just blame it on Andrew. We've got to look, take out our decoder ring, connect the dots and say, who parented Andrew and who parented those officials and who parented the people cheering and voting for that? Who parented the girls who are on TikTok right now today posting their abortion rejoicing videos? Who is parenting these children? Who is teaching them their values? Who is handling their future? Apparently, it's not parents in many, 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 many cases. Ronald Reagan said this, 40th President of the United States. He said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We did not pass it on to our children in the bloodstream, okay? The only way they can inherit the freedom that we have enjoyed is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it on to them to do the same. That's the least that we can do as parents to preserve our freedoms. So many people do not understand that today. So many adults think that these are just American ideals and we will always have them. And we're so blessed and we're the greatest nation in the world and we're the strongest. Well, friends, looking at the crises we have been going through for the past at least decade. I mean, the heavy, heavy financial crises and the suicide crises down the list, okay? We have to go back to who is teaching the children to preserve these freedoms. Now, society's problems are always parenting problems. And right now, what we've got going on is we've got a whole bunch gazillions, millions of households shell-shocked by the sudden realization that their children are absolutely 100% today their responsibility, okay? Why is that such a crisis? Think about it for just a minute. Parents are upended. Their lives have been turned upside down because suddenly their children are with them all day long. And that's a problem. Okay, think about that for a minute. Think about that new mindset in our nation. That is not an old value. That is not a Christian value that the founding fathers of our nation implemented. That somehow we would keep passing our kids off to other people. No, many of them were homeschool families. Look at Abigail Adams and John Adams, our second president of the United States. That woman was a militant mom with her handprints all over those kids and her heart of love and teaching them and gardening with them and learning to live with them while her husband was away trying to buy our freedom as Americans for years. The first 7 out of the first 14 years of her marriage were spent away from John as he was leading the charge to build our great nation of America and get that declaration in place and set up our government and get freedom for us from Britain. Okay, so all of a sudden, school's out and everybody's freaking out. What the, what? Oh, when did it become such a problem that we were in charge of our children? I guarantee you, if this did not include a physical virus, an illness, a potential illness called coronavirus, parents would be marching on City Hall, lining up at schools, banging on the door, saying, do your job, teacher. Do your job, principal. Do your job, public school district, private school. Do your job. Hear that? When did that switch happen from us being responsible for our children to this is such an injustice that we have to do this all day now, right? When did that happen? When did that shift come? When did children become one of our biggest problems? Think about that for a minute. Just let that sink in. People are just crazy nervous about birth control because, children are expensive and children are noisy, snotty-nosed, inconveniences. And if we can't get them through abortion and infanticide, then at least let's hand them off 6 weeks after we've had them, all right? Think about the cruelty. We've just had a baby. We're nurturing that new soul, that part of mommy and daddy, that new creation. We've got 6 weeks. That's 42 measly little days before they go to childcare. Okay, let's drop the problem off at the next door, okay? Because we've got to be double income people because we're chasing the American dream or the Australian dream or the UK dream or the Swedish dream or whatever country you're in. Okay, let's just face that. Let's face this ugly fact. Then we go from daycare, childcare, to preschool. And then we go from preschool to dropping them off at the door of grade school. And then we drop them off at the door of high school. And then we send them on their way to 4 years of college, living on their own, making their own moral choices, spending our money while they become degreed, along with how many million other people that are degreed still working at Starbucks because they can't do anything with their degree. Do you see the insanity of our culture? Do you see the ridiculousness of this emergency of homes having families together all day now, which thrills my heart? I don't underplay the sobriety of the climate that we're in financially, but I have to say to you, I am absolutely thrilled, and I feel it's an answer to prayer that parents now have full responsibility of their children, even if it's for 30 days. They say that it takes 30 days to build a new habit. I know that some of you right now can't go back after 30 days. You're tasting the sweet fruit of home education. You're tasting the sweet fruit of nurturing emotional connection with your child for perhaps the first time in a very long time. You are getting a revelation of what it means to live life together because home education is not just the fastest growing form of education, even before the coronavirus mandatory home education. It was the fastest growing form of education because it works. It works, and it's God's plan that parents carefully teach their children when they wake up, when they walk about. Deuteronomy talks to us about that. Carefully guide your children, carefully teach your children. Imprint upon them your DNA, mom, dad. That is what God's plan is for us and our children. And now the whole wide world is getting a taste of that rather than weary, exhausted kids waking up at early in the morning. You're screaming at them, throwing them out the door, catching the bus, walking them, driving them to school, whatever. They come home with a backpack full of homework. You can't even talk to them till 8 o'clock at night. They go to bed at 8:30, 9:30. You have no quality time when you're not drained and they're not drained, and you're always studying for the next test, the next test, the next test. What I'm saying is this reprieve, this pause, to me, is a divine invitation for so many parents to say, I volunteer to go back and revisit who I am and what I'm about.